Hi, friends. Logan Clements here with the Better Events Podcast. And in this week's episode, guest co-host Julianne Reed and I sit down with our guest, Jackie Baker, to talk all about pricing, profits, and why you might be leaving some money on the table as an event planner. She has a unique experience over the last 30 years of running her event business, and most recently brought on a fractional CFO who you might recognize from a past episode of the podcast. And she is here to share her learnings and some things that you might not want to have to learn the hard way, as well as some just hard truths about what it takes to run an event planning business and what you need to negotiate with clients. So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Logan Clements, and this week I'm joined by guest co-host Julianne Reed, who I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our guest.
Awesome. Thank you. This week, let's welcome Jackie Baker. She's the founder and chief experience officer of Spark Events, a full-service corporate event planning company with more than 30 years of experience and hundreds of events produced nationwide. She's also the co-founder of Event Pro Suite, an all-in-one event management software built by a planner for planners. I also happen to use it. Anything else you'd like to add, Jackie?
No, I think that sums it up for me.
Yes, and we are thrilled to have you here, Jackie. She is a longtime friend of the pod and supporter of the Better Events Conference through Event Pro Suite. And you might also recognize her voice from a previous season. Jackie, you were back with us in season 4, episode 147, where we talked all about sourcing. This week, we're getting into a different topic, but I did link that in the show notes for anybody who wants to go back and listen to that past episode. I also did have one call out before we chat about this, because we are going to be talking about pricing and not leaving money on the table. And we did an episode, Mary and I, not too long ago in this season, where we kind of got into the weeds a bit about raising your rates, like when to do it, how to have that conversation, and some of our own lessons learned. We didn't get very deep into the structure behind some of the pricing mistakes you make in that kind of fee structure process and what it takes to build that profitable business. So that's where you come in, Jackie. We're thrilled to kind of talk to you about some of the adjustments and changes you've made over the years. And as Julianne mentioned, you've been in this industry for 30 plus years. So I feel like over that career in events, that longevity, what took you the longest to fix about your own pricing?
I think the main thing that I've really learned recently is that I have to look at it from a business owner perspective, right? We get into this knowing like, oh, we love to do this event. So this is the type of work I like to do. Maybe I came from corporate event planning, and that meant I had a salary and I just did what I did. What I really needed to shift is that I am the owner of the company, which means I have a lot of overhead. I have insurance. I have, just the time to like spend on administrative work, bookkeeping, all of these things as you're starting out your business. You really need to carve that out and make sure you get paid for that, not just also the event planning piece of it. So that was a huge, huge shift in my thinking, because I kept asking myself, well, shouldn't I be making more? It's like, well, just because Spark Events gets paid X dollars doesn't mean Jackie gets paid X dollars. And so that's a really a big shift. It took a while, and it's just a learning curve. You learn from other people as well. And then when you look at your bottom line repeatedly, you learn some lessons as well. So it's all of that together.
That's awesome. Jackie, like I'm at the very beginning of my event planning company kind of cycle. So, just being in business for about 3 years. So what are the most common pricing mistakes event planners make without even knowing it?
Well, the number one is charging too little, because I think when we all start our businesses, you have a little bit of like the feeling of like imposter syndrome. Like, oh, am I really doing this? Like, am I really worth it? Am I worth that? And all it takes is someone telling you no once, and you're like, oh, then I must charge less. I think the thing is getting an understanding of what the fees are in your area for the type of work you do. And so that means like building a network with other event planners, like as we've done, and really have those real conversations as an owner of a business of what makes sense. Because you need to know all the components that come into it. And it's different when you're a solopreneur, right? So you think when it's a solopreneur, you think, oh, well, I'm just going to do it. I'll do it on Saturday. I can do it at night. I don't need to keep track of my hours. I've got 3 events. I'll just work and work and work. And then you have no idea of how much you actually made and how much you actually lost. So you are kind of, if you keep doing that, you're doing it for free. And that's different being hired as a planner and being a volunteer. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
I love to also make the point of like sometimes like what is expensive is so subjective. Like there is not one, and that was frustrating for me when I first started, of what is a high rate versus a low rate, and what one client would say is, whoa, that's way over budget.
Yep.
And another might say, ooh, we were going to pay you more, but you asked for less. Like, and that just gray area, while is exciting as a planner to be like, wow, the sky's the limit. Eventually I could maybe charge $1 million. But in the moment, it's like overwhelming, where you could be charging a $200 day rate. You could be charging a $1,200 day rate. And the clients that would find that acceptable are different. And yes, I do think some of it aligns with like one experience. Like the older and the more experience you get and the longer you've been in the biz, the more you can charge just based on that experience.
Yeah.
But also some of it is your market and understanding like what kind of events you're doing. Like there's just some of my sporting events I work, their rate is what it is. And if you don't want to work it, they'll find somebody else who can. And that's just, that's what it is. There's not going to be that much of an increase year on year versus some of my other more profitable. Usually the corporates have a little bit bigger budgets, but they also have higher stakes.
Right.
So that's another part I see with pricing.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to know. I don't know if you have anything over your experience, Jackie, of like how you've navigated that discovery process of like knowing what to charge. If you have any tips for folks.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, when you're a solopreneur versus bringing on a contractor to help you, like the pricing is very cut and dry. You know, like I need to make this much a month, and hopefully you can hit that, especially when you're starting out. Then when you go on a bit, you're like, no, now I want to put more in reserves to help grow my company. And then if you charge, like if you bring in a contractor, 1099, you just pay them whatever. It's very, very clean. If you have an employee or anyone on a W-2, that starts blurring it, because what you would have paid them and what they think they're worth, you have payroll taxes, you have, you know, L&I, you have all, oh my God, all, and Washington State keeps adding them. So, you know, you have all these other fees that you need to be able to integrate in there and then justify that rate. So whatever you think you're worth, I would immediately add 20% and be like, just kind of check yourself and then find out. I mean, you don't need to be everyone doesn't need to be your client, right? You're going to find the right people that are the right match. There are going to be causes that maybe you want to, like, especially in a nonprofit world, where you really want to be a part of it. You really want that experience. And so you're kind of like, here's my rate, but here's my discount, is how I always like used to learn to couch it, instead of like charging, you know, let's say 10,000, right? $10,000. I'll charge you 8, but normally my rate's 10, and you'll see it in my proposal. Like, I'm giving you a deal. And so that creates a different mind shift for them. Like, oh, wow, you're really supporting my event versus, but you charge other people this full price. And so it shifts the value proposition in that, you know, client's mind.
Real quick, I want to just, for one term you threw out there was L&I, just for listeners who maybe don't know, that would be labor and industries.
Yep.
So Jackie, that's, what is that? Your
workers comp.
Workers comp.
Yeah.
I don't know if they also have emergency family leave kind of stuff. That's what in Washington State it's called. I'm sure other states it's called different things, but yes, those hidden costs once you move an employee from contractor to W-2. But the inverse, as a constantly a W-2 or a 1099 person, a contractor for people, I have those costs, to your point of like, I pay tax. I always joke. I was like, everybody's got to pay taxes. Yeah. It's a quote from It's a Mad, 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 Mad World that I say way too many times, but I'm like, you got to think about that. And like, to me, it's always like 30% of what comes in, that's taxes. That's not even overhead. That's just to the taxes it goes. So always hard to think about all those things.
Important though, because at the end of the year, you're like, but I did such a great job. We brought in so much money and now I owe this big bill. It's like, well, we need to set that aside, right? There's some pros and cons and best practices.
Exactly. You know, what's interesting is, when I first started my business, I was doing kind of a flat fee. Then I moved to kind of an hourly model. And so maybe just, if you could walk us through the fee structures, either flat fee, percentage-based, hourly, you know, what have you learned over time? And does it vary based on industry? So does your corporate versus your nonprofit change? What does that look like?
Oh, this has been the lesson that I keep learning, like every project, every few years, right? Because every client is different, and until you get into the rhythm of having a multi-year client, and you're like, okay, I know how that works. I know how that works. I personally love a flat fee because it's the onus is on me to like do the heavy lifting and think about like each component of the work and how much it would cost. It's an easier way sometimes for some clients to get to a yes, because then they know this is what we're going to pay you. And it's not like, oh, well, you spent an extra 20 hours on that. I didn't realize, right? And then you adjust the scope. I also like it too, because then you're value pricing, experience pricing. So even if it takes me half an hour to do it, it would have taken you 4, right? So I'm going to just charge this because I know that's what that piece of work is worth. If it takes me longer, that's on me. But if not, then, I'm going to go ahead and be paid for my experience as well. I am not a fan of hourly. I think you get priced like as a commodity. I mean, it's different if you're contracting into an event planning company, but for the client, they're going to question every hour, right? So if I say, well, we're going to deliver this graphic design package, it's going to cost X, then they know they just get that, instead of like, well, we're going to estimate it's going to be 30 hours at the price per hour. And they go, well, why is it 30 hours? Can we make it fewer hours? Can we, and then you're in this like back and forth nickel and diming kind of scenario. So I'm not a fan of that. There are some companies that's the way they roll. And so then you got to work with that and determine if that's the type of client you want to have. Percentage and also the flat fee. How I calculate my flat fee is just the scope of work, but also the percentage based thing where it's like, okay, if your overall budget say is $100,000 for your event, a good rule of thumb I've used, in the beginning it was less and now it is more, is 10%. I used to go 10% of the event budget goes to the planning fee. Other companies, I did a little research online, and it was like, it could be up to 25% of the budget. Again, depending on scope and like how much heavy lifting you're doing. But I just start with like, so what's your budget for the event? Oh, okay, you've got some wiggle room here. And then I come in with like what my rate is based on the scope of work. So I've been flat fee fan for years. You really need to be disciplined about tracking your hours and tracking the hours of your employees and or contractors, because that's where it can get away from you really quick.
That's what's interesting. So I know that, and just to dive in a little bit deeper on that, let's say for a first-time client, you've budgeted flat, but all of a sudden you get a third of the way into the planning process, and now it looks like they're going to exceed what that scope is. What does that conversation look like, or how do you handle that?
It needs to be very clear in your contract, because you're going to have to fall back on it. And an email is not a contract, right? It's a contract. It's really spelled out. When you're writing your scope of work, I use it like Exhibit A at the bottom / scope of work is, for example, on-site is one where it creeps up. They're like, oh no, well, now we have more people. I need you to bring more people. Well, I don't just write my team will be there. I will be like, you get 1 manager and 3 event staff for this many hours on these particular days, right? That's all you get. You want more? Great. We're going to add it at this price. So I think being very, very granular, almost to like, it becomes annoying, right? Because you're like, I know how to do that. But you're like, okay, well, you changed your rooming list 15 times, or we had to go for a tasting, or I had to redo this, or, you have to redo that. So like, especially when we do our graphics packages, because we have an internal graphic designer, which really helps the whole process. She comes back with, you get X number of revisions, X number of concepts. So she's not going back and forth with a client like 15 times to redo something, because it takes a long time. So being very granular, have it all in writing. And then as soon as you see, ooh, we might be going off track, have the candid conversation right off the bat. Like, we would love to support you in this, but like the scope has changed and therefore we need to charge more.
And this is one, Julianne, I have like a hybrid, I feel like, of what you do, Jackie, where I will say up to X hours in a proposal. And especially with new clients and when I'm show calling, which I think is sometimes a hat that a lot of planners don't totally understand what goes into it. So that's, I do get the pushback of the nickel and diming and, do you need 10? Can we come down to 5? Like, and I just have to case by case it, but it does then give me something to lean on when I say up to X hours. And then that prompts me of like, hey, I track my time. We're coming up on you. I had a bucket of 30. I'm up to about 25 hours and you've now put 3 more meetings on my calendar. How do we best want to use this time, or do we want to max it out with those calls? And so
up to is a great phrase to keep, because if it only took you an hour, then great. But
and it gets a little less prescriptive, and I'll do it with like my newbie clients that I've never worked with and I'm unsure, because every client wants to say they don't need you that much. And then if I'm producing, which is much more in the weeds, heavier lift, I then will do a heftier, like up to 80 hours. And sometimes I'll say, I'll bill you based on actuals if we come in drastically under, but that then gives you buffer to know how much we work together. And I have had some clients where I did an up to 100 and then I think they came out at 85. So I bill usually for half up front and then the actuals based on the other half. And then the next year they did ask me, they're like, oh, the proposal number came down. And I said, well, we worked together and I thought maybe 100, but we were about 85. So I've kept the proposal at 85, which then to your point is now year 2, I've worked with them before. I will be faster at what I'm doing. But that was the scope that we were at. So that like helps me where I feel like I'm helping my client, but also helping cover my own butt.
Whereas I generally don't bring my price down on year 2. It actually goes up because now I know you better and I know how to deliver better, and I've shown the value. Unless something in the scope changes, plus inflation, everything costs more anyway. So we have to account for that as well. I've gotten that question, but like, we've been doing it for a while, so it should be less. I'm like, we've been doing it for a while, so we know how complicated it can be.
I was going to say, for a new planner, it would take them more. Mine was, I came down less overall, but I think it was less the less hours, and then the rate went up.
There you go.
So it was like less than 100 hours of what at the old rate, but it was a new rate. So it is tough. But yes, the argument I would make to anyone listening, if you take one thing away from this episode, it's if you are repeating work, please, you need to be raising your rates as you move along. But yes, do not charge less just because year 2, it'll take you less time, because at any other time, you're just kind of screwing over the next planner, next person who pulls that role, because it will take them whatever that initial amount of time took you. So you also, I'd love to dive in a bit to your, you brought in a fractional CFO, which shout out to Kelly Thorpe, who was on the podcast here talking to us all about fractional CFO. That's episode 211 in our show notes. But how did working with bringing on that fractional role kind of change how you think about pricing and profit?
It was a total game changer. I mean, I remember watching that episode, and it was the day before that my current my bookkeeper at the time said, you know what, the level of what you're doing, I think you might benefit from a fractional CFO. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And then I went into my normal Better Events podcast, and boom, there she was. And it has completely changed the way I run my business. It changes the way I do pricing, but it changes the way I view my business. We start with like, what do you want your business to look like? How much do you want to work? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, in 10 years? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to like retire and just make money off of it? Like, do not other people work for you and you take the profits? What does that look like for you? How stressed out do you want to be, or not stressed out? How challenging do you want it? And then what happens is you're not running your business like a checking account, which is how a lot of people do in the beginning, right? Money in, money out. And if it's okay, then paid my bills, paid myself, we're cool, it keeps rolling. But at some point at scale, it does not. And you need to look at, even if there's like a little, like a money that just leaks out of your business, over time, your little rowboat will sink from that leak, right? It's just a little bit. It's like that song, There's a Hole in My Bucket, and it's so true. So bringing a CFO in is a strategic decision of how you want to do your business. Where are you spending money that doesn't make sense? Where are you not spending money and you should be? Are you charging enough? Are you leaving money on the table? Are you not covering your overhead? Are you, all of these deeper questions? And I'm not the accounting person, right? Like I could do a check. Well, not even. I was having trouble with even like Quicken back in the day, keeping track of stuff. So don't run your business like a checkbook. You have to have a strategy and a plan, account for cash flow, how you want to grow. They've counseled me on like, hey, what's the best way to get, an SBA loan. Like I got a small business administration loan. It should fund in the next week, which will be very exciting. That gives me the room to then grow, bring on talent that then sell, and then and just keep going from there. Like, so that's how I wouldn't even know where to start. I wouldn't even know any of that at all. And they really pointed out some, like, here's a couple holes in your bucket, but we're going to go ahead and fix them for you. And also ask us anything. They have clients that they've helped their businesses grow. They've helped triage stuff that wasn't working. But your business needs to align with your life, not the other way around.
That's great.
Yeah,
There's something that you said that was interesting a few minutes ago, which was leaving money on the table. So what does leaving money on the table actually look like in practice? What are some of those moments that maybe, you know, someone who's newer to their business might not understand?
Yeah, I think the way that Logan put it earlier was really good, especially about like, I would have paid you more. Like, oh man. And I've had that come up multiple times. I actually had one client who is a current client, and I love working with them. They wrote in their testimonial, they added to their testimonial, they're great value. And I went, then I'm too cheap. I thought I was killing it. Apparently for you, I'm like a good value. Which again, value for money, you can look at that way. You can also look like I'm undercharging, right? So leaving money on the table means they come to you and they say, Jackie, we've got X event, it's on these days, and we need someone to help this. This is what we think we need. And you come up with your proposal. And then you're like, I'm going to do that piece. That's not the way I look at it anymore. I look at it from a whole event perspective. Like, where else can we help you? Where are you struggling? Oh, were you going to farm out like graphic design? Well, we can do that in-house. Oh, can you tell me how much that would be? Oh, well, are you going to have volunteers or your, employees come and do registration? Oh no, we actually need them networking in the other room with the donors or whatever. Great. We can bring a team to set that up. Look at it at all the different places. Do you need to, like the sourcing thing, like, do you have a place you'd like to go? Do you need like guest rooms to go with your conference? We can help with that for free, right? You look at all the look at it holistically, not just planning like what you're eating and how any of that. Like, how can we help with decor? How can we help with staffing? How can we help with sourcing? How can we help with marketing? How can we help with design, swag? And then every little piece of that, you tack on just a little bit more because you're giving them a service, right? We get things for wholesale, and all the things. And for them, you've really brought them a solution that they didn't even know they needed yet. And so that's how you don't leave money on the table. And then then you pick up on cues when they're like, oh, well, we actually have budget for that. Great. How much is your budget for that? Can we help you with that? Right? Just really be aware. They're going to spend it anyway, and they could spend it with you, and then they don't have to worry about any of those pieces. You just take care of it.
And just from how you kind of structure that for planners, because when you say for free, but it's like there's a markup coming in, right? Yep. So it's what's your budget for decor? It's $2,000. They're paying your company the $2,000. You're then sourcing the decor.
Yep.
Inclusive in that $2,000 is what the decor is plus a markup for your time for that.
And so the difference there is the concept of the markup or the pass through. And there is much debate in the pass through and the markup, because some clients are like, oh, well, if you're buying it for me, just charge me the $1,000 for it. Like, I don't want you to mark that up. Well, guess what? I still get charged taxes on the fact that I bought something. It hits my revenue, even though it hits I know this is very technical, but this is how you have to think as a business owner. You're not doing a favor, right? So it's like, you're going to charge $1,000 and then I give it to you, but I get my tax on that. And it just messes up my numbers a bit. But if I mark it up, I'm covering that base and I'm providing you a service, right? Like, you want to go in and fight with your accounts payable department to onboard another vendor because you have a florist, decor company, transportation, all of these things. That takes forever, and then they don't get paid. But since I'm already onboarded, it'll just come under my umbrella and my one invoice that you pay. So it really, really, you got to demonstrate the service, the value you provide by actually taking all that on. And then just kind of, you can mark it up however you feel comfortable. I recommend a minimum of 5,000, or not 5,000, well, 5%, which can sometimes be 5,000. And I've talked to a lot of other event planning companies, and like, that's like the bare minimum to act as your bank, right? Because we're acting as the bank, we're fronting the money. And that means we're counting on you to pay us on time so that we can get that money back. So we aren't running an issue into cash flow. And then if they got wiggle room, you can mark it up to 35% if you want, if you got like a screaming deal on it, but like their retail cost would have been that. I love the idea of especially some of our vendors, they'll give us a discount. So for that service, your client's only playing retail. If they called up that place, they would pay that price. Because we bring so much volume to those vendors, get a discount. So it's a game. It's a little bit of a chess game for some of that.
Yeah. And I think it's different in every business. I definitely struggle with some of my contracting work. They want receipts and they're just wanting to pay exactly what it is. And that has won me and I don't have a fractional CFO, but my accountant and I debate this because I'm like, some clients, I have the leverage. I can say it is what it is. I do charge based actuals, but with the markup because I booked my flight 4 months ago. You're not paying me for it until 4 months later. And others, it's like I've had to learn to rework a little bit how I think about my project rate or my day rate usually is what I base a project fee on, and build in some of that buffer for those expenses that, again, like you said, you're acting as the bank by fronting for some of that stuff. So.
Yeah. And I think travel is definitely one of those where they really want like the actual, which is fine. Great. And I put that in the contract. Travel fees are actuals. Everything else is not.
Yeah. How did having a CFO change how you communicate rate increases that you've had with clients over the years?
Well, they've helped me set up a pricing structure of how if we have X, like say again, a round number, $10,000. And I'm not going to give away all their secrets because you got to hire them yourself. But they're like a percentage of that immediately goes to the business to run for overhead, to help with all that business development, proposal writing time, all of that. And then this piece of it is going to cover the hours, the team you're going to bring on, and all of that. So you've got to keep it separated. That's just like a song in my head now. But you do have to keep that separate. And then that way, like this runs the business and this is how many hours you have to pay your team. So you come up with an event budget. That has been the biggest game changer for me. I track everything through QuickBooks Online. Every event is a project in there. So every expense is in there. Every hour any of my team members work is in there. And so after the event's done, I can look and be like, oh, the company actually made this much money or not, depending on the hours that they worked. So now with their strong guiding hand, I've implemented much more of a structure on like this event, you get X number of hours to do your part of it. And just because you'd like to spend more, or maybe the client needs more, doesn't mean we're going to do that until I get approval to bring on more hours. Do you know what I mean? Like it could be a very, very slippery slope that you're like, okay, well, I thought this would only take 4 hours. And now back and forth, it's taken 12. Multiply that by a team of 5, you've got a problem, right? So that has been a significant change. And just looking at long-term cash flow, analyzing past year's results and saying, based on this and that projection, this is what you could do. This is what you're capable of. And these are the steps you need to take to get there, has been very empowering. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Logan and Mary have talked on the pod before about not apologizing for your rates. What does your version of that conversation look like?
That's where the flat fee is really good, right? Because we are focusing on the result for you and how you don't need to know the recipe of this amazing dish that I'm going to make for you for dinner. Just know that it's going to be awesome and it's going to cost this. It's like going into a restaurant and saying like, well, I could get a steak at Costco for this. And then like, what are all the, like, and then you're putting rice as a side. Like maybe I should pay that. No, that's the price. And if the client flinches, then we can have a conversation about why and where and the value we provide and where in their budget that we will actually save them money by paying us to handle all these things. And you're not going to make those expensive mistakes. And then if it's just too much, then, like they're not ready for us to work with them. And we would be happy to refer you to other planners that are more junior or that can work with your price point, or whatever, but it's not going to be us. And that's okay. Maybe it'll be us in a couple of years. I've had that too, where it's like, you know what, in a few years, I think we can afford you. Okay, great. Like, let's keep that conversation going. Right. So I definitely don't like to talk like a dollar by the hour, because it's a commodity then. And that's not what we're selling.
Yeah. And I feel like that's again, where it's like, it comes into where everything's so subjective. of what one client will be
Mhm.
you say is expensive. And I do think some of that comes with time, right? Over the
Mhm.
years when you're first
Yeah.
starting out and you're just hungry for any kind of event. Again,
Right.
it doesn't matter if you are a fresh professional out of college or you're pivoting from being in another industry that you worked for 20 years and now you're just getting into events.
Right.
I feel like that also plays a factor into it. My other tip for listeners would be, and we've talked about it here on the pod before, but like doing that tiered structuring, because I worked for an agency way back when that would just discount stuff to make it work with the budget and then get really
Mhm.
frustrated internally when we couldn't hit, to your point, those buckets of hours. And it was like, well,
Right.
the scope didn't change, the dollar
Right.
amount changed, but the
Right.
scope didn't. And
Right.
so I enjoy doing, especially if they truly are like, I don't have a budget. It's like, great. Why don't I treat it as an education moment of like, here's essentially a low, medium, high, gold,
Yep.
silver, bronze, or I will do like, I think I do usually now like option 1, option 2, option 3, which option 1's like on site only with like
Yep.
one prep call. Option 2, okay, let's give you a little bit of a bucket of hours to jump in where we
Mhm.
need. Option 3 being like, you really want to like give me all of your speakers' contact information and I'm running with the whole thing from soup to nuts in terms of your program. And that can help too if the client doesn't know. And I feel like it helps with showing your worth.
Yeah.
But I also acknowledge that like my first year in business, I wanted to work with everyone. I wanted to
Right.
work with any budget. I
Right.
just wanted to. And so I just want to acknowledge if that's where you're at, that's great. Just know though,
Yeah.
if you've been doing it for 20 years, you don't need to keep it at that level.
No, and I really love the way that you put that a la carte pricing on a proposal. We do that as well. And then they can see whether like, okay, if you're going to do the graphic design and we create the brand and the logo for your event and all of that, then it's going to cost this. And if we do this, it's going to cost this. When for on site, it's going to cost this. You pick and choose which of those things you want. I mean, obviously we'd love to do all of that for you. But at least you know the different buckets instead of like, oh, we're going to charge $50,000. How's that break out, right? Like you need to give them some transparency, but not necessarily give them all the calculations. Yeah. And give them the option like, okay, we'll do our own graphic design or we'll hire someone. And then they go find someone. They're like, oh, actually, it's going to be better if you just did it for us. Or we're running out of time. We need you to like actually pick this piece up. Great. So I said it was this. This is what it's going to be.
All right. Well, we could keep talking to you for hours, I feel like, but I do want to wrap us up. If there anything else you'd like to add that we didn't get to yet today, and then end with where our listeners can find you.
I think the main thing is just, it's hard to understand your worth sometimes, but when you talk with, build that network of people in your community. The events community is awesome. And you're going to learn a lot, and we try to lift each other up. I mean, I've raised my prices because someone coached me to do it. And then I coached someone else to raise their prices. Right. And just be like, this is what I charge. And you can do it too. And I've seen the success of that. And so believe in yourself, but get connected to people who you can actually, it validates what you're doing, and you can just talk to them about it. You can reach me at the easiest way is really at my website or on LinkedIn. So sparkeventshq.com is our website, or find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. Yeah, I think those are the main things. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram.
All the socials. And then we'll also link in Event Pro Suite for those that are looking for a tech solution. And Jackie's talked about it all the time at the conference, and you'll hear about it more probably at this year's conference.
Yes, absolutely.
But Julianne's also a happy customer. So there's lots of people you can talk to, listeners, if you're looking for
game changer.
some new software.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. We appreciate having you.
Thank you. So great to chat with you.
Yeah. And then that brings us to the end of our episode. But Julianne, I actually have the bonus tip this week. So I will jump in with my bonus tip. This one is just a little nugget for you if you are working an awards show or have any awards program where you're allowing your winners to speak. I just had a client say, be brief and be bold. That was what they told the winners. And I was like, that was just such a good, I don't know, it rolled off the tongue. It was a very polite way to tell people, we're telling them to be bold, but please be brief when giving their acceptance speech. And I just think that is something that you can tell your winners or their teams in the prep, but even give it to your MC as an actual line to say, to tell them and prime folks before they even come up and find out that they're a winner, that we are encouraging you tonight to come up, accept your award, be brief, be bold. And it did keep all of our acceptance speeches to a minute and under, which is unheard of. So that is my bonus tip for this week.
That's super, super smart. I love that one. Well, here's where to find us. You can follow the Better Events Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can email Logan and Mary at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn directly as well. Just let us know you heard about us from the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want more Better Events content, join the paid private community on Substack. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.